I have complained about the LSAT's online testing interface for years. So when LSAT announced a brand new interface for the August test, I was genuinely excited. I figured that after all that, almost anything would be an improvement. And so I sat down with the demo they just posted, and honestly, I want the old one back. I've been teaching the LSAT for over 20 years. I didn't like the old interface, and so when I tell you I want it back, that should kind of tell you something. If you're taking the August LSAT or later, you're going to want to hear this because what's in this new interface will affect your score if you're not ready for it. Now, before I get into the specifics, let me give you the backstory because it makes everything worse. This redesign was not built to make your testing experience better. Their primary goal was to improve test security and operational infrastructure behind the scenes. The interface that you interacted with was not the focus. They were solving their problems, not yours. And look, I get it. Running a testing platform across thousands of devices simultaneously, meeting federal accessibility requirements, keeping the LSAT secure given all the cheating over the past couple of years, that is a real engineering challenge. I'm not saying it's easy. But here's what happened. In the process of rebuilding the back end, they broke tools on the front end that students actually depend on. Now, these are the features that you reach for in the middle of a hard question when the clock is running and your brain is already at capacity. Every few years, LSAC changes the LSAT, and most students hear there's an update and they tune it out. There's a new color, new buttons in slightly different places, nothing that really should change how you change the test. But this time, it's not that. These are functional changes. And if you're taking the LSAT this August or later, this is what you are going to see on test day. This is the exact new interface. Now, I want to be fair, so let's start with what actually got better with the new interface. The look is cleaner, it's more polished. They added the ability to change the color scheme of the text on the screen, and that is genuinely new. If you've ever found standard black on white hard to read under test pressure, this is a real improvement. They deserve kudos for that. The full screen mode is also better. But that's about where my compliments end. The elimination tool is a disaster. Imagine that you're in a logical reasoning section, you're running low on time, and you've narrowed it down to 2 choices. You want to cross off the other 3 and focus. But in the current interface, the one I've spent years in criticizing, 1 click, you can cross off an answer and you're done. But in the new interface, that same action requires an extra click every single time on every answer you want to eliminate. And I know that might sound small, but think about what's happening in that moment. Your working memory is overloaded, you're watching the clock, you're under pressure. Every unnecessary action is friction that your brain did not budget for. And over the course of 35 minutes, those extra clicks add up. And we've got modern design conventions for this very thing. A small toggle icon next to each answer with 1 tap. This is not a hard problem to solve. They just didn't choose to solve it. Now, another thing I don't like is that the annotating of answer choices is also gone, and this one's a real loss because strong test takers don't just read answer choices, they work them. They'll underline a key phrase in an answer they're weighing. They'll circle language that feels off. They'll connect specific wording back to something in the passage. And that does 2 things. It leaves a visible record of your thinking on screen, and it forces the deliberate part of your brain to do the work instead of letting your instincts grab whatever sounds good. That is all gone from the choices and the question stems. You can still highlight in the passage itself, but the answers where you actually make decisions, you can't mark that up anymore. If this was part of how you work, you're gonna need a new system before August. Another bad change, you cannot deselect an answer. And this one genuinely caught me off guard. Right now, if you select answer choice B, and then you want to step back, you want to look at the question with fresh eyes, you click it again and it deselects, the question goes blank, nothing chosen. But in the new interface, once you select an answer, something is always selected. You can switch from B to D, but you cannot go back to blank. Now, a lot of experienced test takers will use deselection deliberately. You make your best guess on a first pass, you flag it, you move on, and when you come back, a question with an answer already sitting there changes how your brain approaches it. you are going to anchor to that choice whether you meant to or not. So the ability to return to a question with no prior selection is a real strategic tool, and right now it's gone. Another problem is the flagging system. Previously, you could see your flagged questions at a glance on the navigation bar. Now you've got to open a separate panel to find them. That is an extra click, an extra mental step every time you want to review what you've marked, which, if you're managing your time well, should be happening constantly. And then there's the navigation bar. Currently, you can see all the questions in your section laid out along the bottom at once, but the new interface only lets you see 10 questions at a time. There is no visual indicator for which ones you flagged. You've got to click through the pages to see the full picture. Now, that's not the biggest change on this list, of course, but if you use that bar to gauge where you're at in a section and you manage your pacing, and you should be, your process has changed. Then there is screen behavior across devices, and this one doesn't get talked about enough. The interface is going to render differently based on your computer's screen size and resolution. If you're on a larger monitor, it's workable, but if you're on a laptop, elements kind of shift around, the menus appear and disappear, and you're going to lose visibility on tools that you need. In reading comp, the passage view has some issues also. The short paragraphs are going to get split across 2 columns, even when there is room to display them as one. And of course, you're not going to get to choose your screen on test day, so you want to practice on different setups if you can, so that you know what it's going to look like if things get compressed. Now, my honest take where I land on this, LSAC did make the interface look better, but they also made it work worse. It's worse functionality wrapped in a nicer wrapper. There is so much working memory management happening during this test that any added friction eats up a real chunk of your focus. You just don't have spare cognitive bandwidth on the LSAT. You just don't. Every extra click you've got to make, every hidden panel, every moment where you're saying, hey, wait a second, where did that go? That's energy you're not spending on the question in front of you. And I know this might just be the discomfort of change to some extent. Anytime that you rearrange something people are used to, the first reaction is going to be negative. And I've thought about that. But I didn't like the old interface to begin with, and so I would think that anything new would be an upgrade, and this is not that. And so if you're in the position where you just got comfortable with the current setup and you're thinking, great, now I've got to start over, yeah, I hear you. That is exactly the situation. And the faster you accept that, the faster you can get ahead of it. Now, here's something I've learned over 20 years of coaching the LSAT that almost nobody talks about. Your score on test day is not just about how well you know the material. It's about how well you perform under the exact conditions of that specific test. The room, the timer, and the interface in front of you. I've sat with students after test day who were hitting 170 in practice and came out with a 164. And there's almost always the same thread in the debrief. Something felt off early. The test interface didn't feel or behave the way they'd trained for. It threw them off in the first section and they just couldn't recover. This is not a problem of your knowledge, it's a problem of the conditions, and it is completely preventable. Your brain under pressure does not adapt on the fly. It wants the familiar. And so when something unexpected happens at a high stakes moment, your brain treats it as a threat and diverts resources to deal with it. And those resources should have gone to the question in front of you. And so any moment of hesitation, a second of confusion, breaks your rhythm. And on a test like the LSAT, where 1 or 2 questions can move your score 2 or 3 points, that's something. And here's the other thing. Your prep platform, if you're using one of the third-party unofficial ones, they have not updated for this either. This just came out yesterday. And so if you're using one of these unofficial tools for practice and they've still got the old layout, you're training your muscle memory for an interface that no longer exists. So here's what I want you to do right now if you're taking the LSAT in August or beyond. Today, go look at the new interface on LawHub, pull up the demo. Don't study, don't time yourself. Just spend 20 minutes clicking around. Find the elimination tool, work through the flagging, practice selecting and switching answers, and try it on your laptop without an external monitor, not a big screen. The only goal here is that nothing surprises you later on test day. Then later this week, do a full timed section with the demo to expose your friction. Every moment you hesitate, every moment something doesn't feel automatic, Write it down. That's what you've got to fix now, not in August. Then before you go to the choices, write down on scratch paper the one thing the correct answer has to do in your own words. Then hold each answer choice up against that standard one at a time. Now, this is more disciplined than just marking up because you're forced to define what you're looking for before the choices start pulling you in different directions. And of course, this interface change is frustrating, but if you do it right, the adjustment can make you more accurate, not less. Now, since you can't go back to a blank question, be intentional before you flag. Make a real, considered guess first, then flag it and move on. Don't make the habit of leaving a hasty pick sitting on a question you plan to revisit because you're going to anchor to it. The habit is pick deliberately, flag, and move on. Build that habit now. Then when it comes to the navigation bar, you want to count your flags differently. Since you can't see flagged questions at a glance anymore, you want to keep a tally of those on your scratch paper. It just takes a second, and it will give you the awareness at a glance that the interface just took away. Now, of course, if there are any other changes to the interface, if they take any of my feedback into account and they fix some of it, great, I will update you, but don't wait for that. Start getting ready for the new change now. And if this was useful, share it with someone you know preparing for the LSAT in August or beyond, because most people have no idea that this is coming.